Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. Over the past 7 years, we've understood what matters most to you, the entrepreneur. And in year 8, we're taking head on two of your most pressing concerns, that of funding and mentoring. I'm Sunanda Jayaseelan. On the show tonight, we're bringing you highlights of a panel discussion that we did in Mangaluru, talking about why that city is the perfect case study for skill development. My colleague Pooja Jain caught up with the biggest experts from across the state and the city to interact face to face with you, the entrepreneur. Listen in to some key highlights of that evening.
Bangalore has long enjoyed a reputation as the provider of skilled manpower, highly educated manpower to seemingly everyone everywhere, from Mumbai to the Middle East. Why so? Why Mangalore? Where does this stem from?
Thank you, Pooja. I think Mangalore's greatest advantage, which it still retains, is the foundation. You see, if you provide skill, if you provide anything to anybody, your foundation should be strong. And Mangalore's foundation probably is, I would say, the best in Karnataka. Bangalore is close with science and technology. But we have such a huge amount of learning, education institutions. Basically, it automatically creates skill. So when your foundation is top class, you end up getting a lot of results there.
Well, Ajit, weaving you into the conversation here, Joseph has just talked about this strong foundation, but I'd like to break it down one notch further. So is this strong foundation anchored to a highly diversified economy? Between shipbuilding on the one hand, special economic zones on the other, you've got processing factories, you've got petrochemicals. Mangalore seems to be home to it all. Does this work to the city's benefit or to its detriment?
The whole point started because of the tile industry, which was here since long, as well as the BD industry. So everybody was an entrepreneur at their home. So entrepreneurship has been in the blood. It's in the DNA of every Mangalorean. So that has taken them to the next level.
Well, Sunil, let's bring your opinion into this conversation. So if there is a highly diversified economy, does that naturally breed entrepreneurship, or does that put the city at the risk of becoming, a jack of all trades, so to speak, and then you don't become a hub or specialized in any one sector in particular to build a competitive advantage?
Yeah, I think, let me answer it this way, that there are many gaps all across. But then there are pockets in this country, who are pretty, let's say, advanced in terms of understanding, be it BFSI, be it IT, be it, retail, be it oil, be it, shipping, be it mining, and more so because of the education hub around here. Whatever are the gaps getting identified automatically moves into such towns, and in fact, not only Mangalore, but there are many clusters across the world. But from that standpoint, this itself, then almost challenges to such people who are there in this kind of place who, and my friend just said, if the entrepreneurship is right in their DNA, so they will spot it out first and then try to, work out the solutions which could be global in nature.
But doctor, in the same breath, isn't Mangalore also to some extent a victim of a brain drain? There's an educated manpower base here that is perhaps always on the lookout for opportunities elsewhere.
The very core of this district started with this, if at all the people of this district has to improve, the financial institutions has to be there, the health industry has to be there, the educational institutions have to be there. If these three comes in, the rest of things will follow. So these things, the founding fathers probably about 60, 80 years. If you look at this district, has probably, no other district has got 5 large banks coming out of a district. That laid a solid foundation for the growth of this city.
Building on what Sir has said, Vatika, you've mentored so many female entrepreneurs, right? And my personal belief is that women are entrepreneurial by nature because they, of course, have to manage the home. So that said, these entrepreneurial skills, How transferable do you find them to be as women go on and shape their individual future career graphs?
Honestly, I think for women, it's kind of a tough task because I think their biological clock and their career clocks work together. So there's always a little bit of a clash there. But nevertheless, I think women, like you rightly mentioned, are always more creative, are somehow, I think, God-gifted with a lot of multitasking capabilities, which is why they're able to manage both their homes and their entrepreneurial ventures equally well. So coming to the generation now, I'm proud to say that a lot of young girls are having their own startups, or are probably they gain some amount of experience from corporates, but then they're coming back to start their own entrepreneurial ventures. So I think it's, like sir rightly mentioned, it's in the blood. Whether it's a man or a woman, I think Mangalore is the place for entrepreneurial ventures to boom here.
Now, Mohammed, naturally I want your point of view here, given that you are considering a migration from Bangalore to Mangalore. For the female or male entrepreneurs in this audience, or aspiring entrepreneurs in this audience, say they are looking to, build their base in Mangalore itself. What are the resources available at their disposal? Whose doors can they and should they knock on?
I think the majority of the resource is the skilled resource, the people themselves, right? I mean, you have one of the more than 20 plus engineering colleges here. So technology-wise, or maybe healthcare-wise, you have a lot of educational institutions. So you don't have, so all these people, like sir said, have to now, used to earlier move out because they don't get opportunities here. They move out in Bangalore, and let's say a starter, fresher salary would be like 15,000-20,000 rupees in Bangalore. And two-thirds of that money is gone just staying there. Well, if the same opportunity today is given here in Mangalore, which Infosys is giving, Cognizant is here, Thomson Reuters has moved out. So we are also trying to see that why don't we also look at this opportunity where we give that same 15,000-20,000 rupees here, and they can save all that money, and they can easily, that 10,000 to 12,000 rupees they can easily save, and that can bring back to this economy here. That spend can happen here. So there are companies who are already moving. So we saw this early trend, and I think 2 years back, even the central government, they thought that Mangalore is the startup district for India, and they named it here, and they started a co-working space here. So they started seeing that, okay, this has a lot of resources, and if opportunity is given here, exposure is given here, then people can also grab this opportunity.
Perhaps, though there may be a desire to stay in this city, perhaps there's just an awareness issue in terms of, for example, if there's a promising entrepreneur in this audience and they need incubation support, they need mentorship, they're looking for funding, they're looking for strategic input on their business model, who do you suggest they approach? What sort of setup does Mangalore have to offer, and what are the industry bodies that represent their voice?
Actually, to be honest with you, today, the whole kind of ecosphere has changed. And it's become very positive because after the Startup India initiative, there are amazing kind of initiatives available. I know because I'm part of it. And almost every day we get mails. Every day. It's unbelievable. I've never seen it anywhere in the world. I've never heard of it. Other countries have smaller startup systems. So what they do is that they basically have more personalized interaction. In a country like ours, which has 1 billion people and the second startup thing, 35,000 companies in startup. Startup India basically is not too difficult to get kind of shortlisted for. They shortlist about 40% of the companies. And you don't actually have to go to a Bangalore or a Bombay or a Delhi to kind of get funded or so on and so forth. You can sit in Mangalore, and you get, if you're part of Startup India, NASSCOM has them. There are a lot of initiatives. I think CII also has them, Ajay knows. But if you're part of these initiatives, you get everyday mails saying apply for this thing. You even get mails apart from companies like Cisco, Infosys, Wipro. You also get mails basically for countries. Because even countries from districts in Europe like Bavaria are desperate for startups. So you actually can sit in Mangalore and be a success.
I would like to add
Please.
one point here. When you said about incubation and other stuff, today a lot of engineering colleges are offering incubation centers here at almost no cost. Some of them, they are only looking at, can you give our students some exposure? We want some internship to be done in Mangalore. Now all these students have to go to Bangalore just for 3 months internship. Now companies can be here, have their incubation center here. You can probably have a nice startup idea and you can get resources as interns from college directly. You can have your incubation office inside the college. Manipal has this incubation. The college which I am referring is Mangaluru Institute of Technology and Engineering, MITE. They have incubation center. We have ourselves set up an incubation center there. Nain is offering. IKP, one more Karnataka K-Tech, they are offering. In Mangalore, there is CEOL, which is central government funded incubation center. There are a lot of things. If you just probably Google out, you will probably get a lot of options where you can start.
A lot of untapped resources.
Yes.
Ma'am, you had a point.
Yes, Pooja, to add on, like you said, for the younger generation, if they want to connect to venture capitalists or even for mentoring, I think something like a Chamber of Commerce and Industry that I belong to is the right place to come to, because here we have businesses, from varied industries. They come from with a lot of experience, of course. At the Chamber of Commerce this year, we have the president in the audience. We've started with the industry and academia subcommittee, which is trying to bridge the gap between the two and is looking out to mentoring students and connecting them to venture capitalists. And we are also visiting all these colleges so that we can bring them on board, and so we are able to bridge this gap. Like Azan rightly mentioned, KCCA is also one of the prime movers, which is responsible for bringing COL into Mangalore. So we are also the connect, between the industry and the government. So I think the students could always come to the Canada Chamber of Commerce and Industry or the budding entrepreneurs if they want to connect to venture capitalists or for mentoring or any of their requirements.
Some fantastic ideas there. Please, sir.
I'd just like to add an aspect here. The Vadwani Foundation, we are a philanthropic organization, and one of the biggest two clear verticals are how do we motivate a student in college to think about entrepreneurship if he or she has that acumen in them. Second part is, if somebody has set up the business, how do you make them grow at a 5x or a 10x scale? So these are the two areas which we do completely philanthropic in 19 countries.
That is just phenomenal. I mean, entrepreneurship being nurtured in elementary school. That is not something we've seen here as yet, but I hope to see much more of it in the future.
Let's slip into a very short break on that note. Much more on the other side when we come back. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. With us here, Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight bringing you highlights for panel discussion from Mangaluru, talking about a case study for skill development.
Well, let's talk about the small, medium and large organizations as you just touched on. So many MNCs have decided to set up sizable development centers and, a significant presence in Mangalore. And in this audience and amongst some of you, we of course have a lot of smaller technology-enabled companies, SMEs, startups. So, with so many MNCs coming into this city, does that create opportunities for technology-based SMEs, or does that pose a threat to them?
I don't see it as a threat, because an MSC, when it comes into a place like Mangalore, will basically look at certain number of skills. Now, either the local companies have two choices. Either they kind of work with the MNC to provide that skilling, but if it's a development center, they can't do that because they have their own thing. So they have to basically try and connect to the ecosystem. And to give them kind of credit, a lot of the MNCs today look at startups as a kind of reserve bank, not of India, of Mangalore. So because basically they say, okay, these guys have got some stuff which could help me. So even say an IBM or an Infosys, when they are very, very open today to see a startup which has some technology which they can kind of work with them, maybe even acquire them. Every single MNC has got a fund today. So actually it's a great opportunity for the startup. The problem is if he's doing mundane stuff. But many startups, in that case, then he already knows that the Mangalore market is small for him. He has to look at a Bangalore, and which is why you have to kind of look at outside clients, Bangalore clients, which they do anyhow. It's actually an opportunity. And whether the startups are using it or not is definitely an opportunity.
I believe Mangalore is, Karnataka's only city that is connected by, air, rail, road, and sea. So it would paint the picture that we have a maturing infrastructure here. But you seem to think that that is one of the untapped industries where there's potentially huge upside for startups to succeed. Is that right?
Yeah, we have only one MRPL, which is again a petroleum sector, and which doesn't need a lot of micro and small assistance for them. There are hundreds of smaller industries which are catering to them. We can't do an OEM here and OEM parts and supply it to Bangalore because that distance advantage is not there. And though we are well connected, that connectivity is not there from Mangalore to Bangalore. And this has been repeatedly represented by our association, which is Canada Small Industries Association, to the government for better road connectivity for us to the Bangalore so that we can cater to that industry.
Absolutely. And Doctor, do you agree with this point of view? And if so, what are some of the untapped industries that Mangalorean entrepreneurs and startups can better take advantage of? How do they leverage location to their advantage?
Though I stay in Bangalore, without telling anything about Bangalore, I said probably Bangalore is a disadvantage for most of the districts in Karnataka. If you look at it, you're in a place like Mysore, which is very, very closely connected to Bangalore. Industries do not flourish very well because everybody feels the opportunity lies in Bangalore. Probably people from other countries feel they have to set up everything in Bangalore. I don't know whether it is positive, it is negative, whether the spin-off effect will come into other districts. Everybody is waiting for the spin-off effect. But it is not happening. Everybody wants, whether it is Bangalore weather, or it is the connectivity to the global markets, is it the everybody from the country lands up in Bangalore with their talent, which is actually making Bangalore very interesting. But in a way, it is stifling the growth of a lot of other districts. That's something which we are seeing, and government has been trying. It's not that they are not developing infrastructure elsewhere, but while developing infrastructure, if entrepreneurs do not want to set up in, let us say, in a place like Mangalore, and they would prefer to do it in Bangalore, that's something, how that mindset has to be changed. Probably a lot of work has to be done by institutions, because as Madam did mention here, one of the things that we have seen, we definitely fault with the educational institution, because today educational institutions have been more transferring knowledge than skills. The skill set required to be an entrepreneur, skill set to work in a technology space, the skill set for how to look at is not at all there. I think so. A lot of institutions have started realizing that they have already set up that skilling part of it. If that comes in, probably we will also have to do a lot more. The ecosystem has to do a lot more do a lot more to ensure that industry move out of Bangalore to a place like Mangaluru. It's not just infrastructure; it's also the mindset has to be created.
Sure. And Doctor, when you bring up that example, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Mumbai Pune example. There's a huge parallel there. So, Sunil, I'd love your input on why you believe that model may have worked, and here we're a bit more stifled.
The reason is Pune had two major advantages when they start itself. One is the chemical industry in Pune and the automobile industry in Pune, which supported a lot of small enterprises around Pune, which then the culture automatically built. So, for example, what Ajit did mention, that there is only one industry which is there, which is very large, but it is not supporting any ecosystem development in terms of entrepreneurs, is a true fact. But the type of industry that came in Pune, and Bombay necessarily is not a manufacturing hub. If you look at Bombay, never was a manufacturing hub. It was always either they used to move to Gujarat or to Pune, and that is why a lot of districts around Pune, Mumbai, really both in Gujarat and Maharashtra actually developed. But that is not so happening in Bangalore, because Bangalore is expanding around it, and that's why everybody feels there is still space in Bangalore. Probably that is what is crashing the infrastructure there. But that is true basically, and it is true, and all government have been trying. Probably, I'll give an example outside of Mangalore, because I come from Mysore. I know that they set up a huge electronic hub, but nothing took off there. But everybody here went back to Bangalore and set up their industry and succeeded. So probably we need to build a lot of culture in the people and give confidence in this.
Sure. Mohammed, there's a lot of talk about a government push to make Mangalore an animation hub in particular. so which could certainly shape the dynamics of the local tech ecosystem. So, your thoughts on whether you're feeling the impact of that transformation, or is that largely headlines and talk?
I think a lot of groundwork has to happen there. Certainly there is enough potential. I would not say that we do not have potential. Today, in the kind of industry that we are working, software or maybe animation, you can work remotely. You don't have to be there, do that stuff, right? You can do it remotely, and today infra is not a problem. You have connectivity everywhere and all things has improved. Devices have become cheap. Knowledge is available on YouTube. It's available free. So it's all there, but the groundwork is like, what you are saying to me at the moment. I don't know how much of the crowd knows that there is, demand for animation. There's demand for this. So that awareness is not there. Definitely there is potential, but the groundwork or the field work the government has to do to make sure that reaches to the right people is not there.
Well, I believe that makes for a wonderful note upon which to wrap our discussion. I have to thank all of our panelists for, really drawing in on their personal and professional anecdotes.
That's our show tonight. If you want to know where we're headed to next when it comes to our 20-city roadshow here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, or you have any feedback on this particular episode, here's how you let us know. Our contact details up on your screens in just a moment. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.